Have you ever felt like you're literally fighting with your own apps? Trapped in a digital world that's just more frustrating than it is helpful? Well, today we're going to dig into a pretty radical idea called Cloud Atlas OS. And it's not just another app. It's a whole plan to basically give power back to the people by tearing down the very systems that drive us all crazy.
And this quote from the creator of Cloud Atlas OS, it just hits the nail on the head, right? It perfectly captures that feeling of wrestling with our own tech. It's not just about tiny little frustrations. He calls it a literal horror show.
Okay, so let's really frame the problem here. We're calling this section the modern tech horror show, because honestly, these daily annoyances are really just symptoms of a much bigger, deeply broken system.
So let's break down this horror show. I think we've all been there. We've got so-called smart functions that are anything but. We've got constant surveillance that turns our private chats into ads a minute later. You try to report a bug and it just vanishes. And then there are those geolocation features that seem to punish you just for being in a different country. And of course, pricing that is just totally opaque and unfair. It's a cycle of frustration we all know too well.
Here's a perfect real-world example. The guy behind Cloud Atlas OS, he ordered a Grab ride, think Uber but in Malaysia, for 60 ringgit. Simple enough. But when he arrived, the price had magically jumped to 70. So he complained and the company refunded him. But then they gave the driver a strike. All of a sudden, he's stuck defending the driver, who's just another victim of this totally confusing system. And this just perfectly captures that feeling of being completely powerless, doesn't it? We've all done this. You find a real problem, a genuine bug, you take the time to write it all out, and you hit send. And then, what happens? Absolutely nothing. Crickets. Months, sometimes years go by, and that same bug is still there. It really feels like your feedback just got launched into a black hole.
So you can see this isn't just about us being annoyed. It's a systemic problem. In fact, the source material for this explainer calls these platforms the enemy of mankind. Why? Because their entire business model is built from the ground up to exploit both the workers and the customers.
And we're not talking about some small niche problem here. This is everywhere. From getting a ride to ordering food to finding freelance work, these platforms have basically become the gatekeepers for millions and millions of people, and they dominate huge chunks of our economy. And the formula is painfully simple and really, really extractive. The platforms just stick themselves right in the middle of a transaction. The result? Workers end up making less, and customers end up paying more. All that profit in the middle gets siphoned off by what is, a lot of the time, just a piece of software.
So, if that's the problem, what's the alternative? Well, this brings us to the core idea we're digging in today. A radically, and I mean radically different model called Cloud Atlas OS.
Okay, so this quote is blunt. There's no other way to put it, but it gets right to the heart of the project's philosophy. The focus here isn't on attacking people, it's about disrupting the exploitative systems they've built. The target is the code, the business model, the whole rotten structure.
Now this is where it gets really powerful. The contrast just couldn't be more stark. In the old way, the platforms can take a huge cut. We're talking up to 50% of what a worker earns. With the Cloud Atlas OS model, the worker keeps 99%. It just completely flips the entire economic equation on its head.
Seriously, let that sink in for a second. 99%. So on a $100 job, $99 goes straight to the worker. And that last 1%, that's not profit for some faceless corporation. It's just used to maintain the decentralized network that makes the whole thing possible. The platform is there to serve the users, not to profit off them.
Okay, so this all sounds amazing, right? But you're probably wondering, how does this thing actually get built and improved if there's no giant company behind it? Well, that's where the community comes in. The whole system is designed to be built by the very people who use it.
It all works through this really cool feature called fix/improve mode. Literally anyone, and you don't need any coding skills, can suggest a change. You can just say, hey, fix element 17, or we should combine element 3 with 9. The community sees that suggestion in real time, they validate it, and then they get to work building the solution. And this is the real game changer. This is the exact opposite of sending your feedback into that black hole we were talking about. Ideas can become actual usable features almost instantly. Why? Because there's no corporate bureaucracy, no endless product meetings, no waiting around for the next quarterly update. The platform evolves in real time based on what the users actually need.
All right, let's talk about where this project is at right now. Because this isn't just some concept on a whiteboard. It is actively moving from theory into a live, working system. So here's the roadmap.
The core peer-to-peer network, and P2P just means users connect directly to each other with no company server in the middle, that part is already built and live. The plan is to kick off a big viral campaign in early 2026 with a very bold first mission: to create a global, decentralized alternative to platforms like Uber and Lyft. So how would one of these P2P ride shares even work? It's actually shockingly simple. A rider puts a request on a map. A driver sees it and accepts. Then they connect directly, using the tools they already have on their phones, like Google Maps for navigation and whatever payment app they prefer. The platform is just the map that brings them together. That's it.
And that's really the key thing to get here. This isn't some kind of impossible, futuristic technology. There's no magic involved. It's just logic. It's about using the tools that already exist, maps, navigation, payments, and simply cutting out the expensive, extractive middleman. It's just a logical rearrangement of the pieces we already have. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking. What about taxes? What about regulations? Is this whole thing just a scheme to get around the rules? Well, the project's goal isn't to create a system for tax evasion. Far from it. The idea is to build a transparent framework where those kinds of rules can be created by the community, not just imposed on them from the top down.
And that really brings us to the final and biggest question of all. This isn't really about a new app. It's about totally reorganizing our digital economy. It's about shifting power away from giant corporations and back to communities. It asks all of us to imagine a more transparent, a more equitable system. So the question isn't just what would you build? The real question is, what kind of digital world do we actually want to live in?